This is WPTV, today on 5 at 11.
Pandemic, hair loss, coronavirus survivors, and even those who haven't gotten sick share their shedding nightmares. A local hair expert weighs in on what to do.
COVID survivors are dealing with yet another daunting reality: hair loss. Actress Alyssa Milano shared this week her hair falling out in clumps after her long battle with COVID. Doctors say they are seeing cases of COVID long haulers losing their hair. These are patients who have recovered from the virus, but this new misfortune results either weeks or even months later. Morning, everyone. Dr. Alan Bauman joining us today to talk about, and we're hearing a lot about this now, long haulers, or people who have survived COVID and now maybe they're a couple months in from their battle. They're starting to say that they're losing their hair.
Yes, Hollani, thank you so much for having me. This is a very, very important concern, not only for people who have suffered the virus, but also for everybody else too. We knew that this was coming. I mean, even back in the pandemic in the early 1900s, they saw, after the infection with the virus and the high fevers, they saw what we call telogen effluvium, which is a synchronized shedding phase. So this is not something that those people who have suffered COVID are imagining. Obviously, you can see them on Twitter and Facebook, literally with the hair coming out and that look of despair in their eyes. So it's a very, very big concern. And especially if you have underlying conditions.
With the cases that you're seeing, I'm sure it's a variety, but clumps, is it just very patchy? Who are you seeing come in with this issue in terms of even race or ethnicity?
Yeah, it cuts across all ethnicities and both genders. Obviously, the longer hair you have, the more hair loss you're going to see. And that would be true, after pregnancy or trauma or any kind of fever or sickness, psychological or physiological. You can see shedding, this synchronized shedding phase. So it can affect anybody. But, of course, if you're prone to shedding, or if you have, let's say, male or female pattern hair loss or other conditions, the situation obviously can be much worse. So not everybody's going to see this shed. If you have short hair or you already have some hair loss, you may not necessarily notice that shed is happening after the fever. Yeah.
I've got to imagine too, in terms of COVID, maybe, you don't necessarily have the virus itself, but everybody seems to be stressed during this time. So just the average person is probably experiencing some hair loss. I mean, myself included, it feels like.
Yeah, it's an unusual time for everyone. Everyone has had to make adjustments, and how you adjust to those changes, socially through lockdowns and isolation, to changes in terms of working from home or studying from home. The amount of social interactions you're having can impact your psychological well-being. And so, and of course, sleep disruption, nutritional disruptions, exercise and fitness disruptions, the things that we used to do to kind of take care of ourselves have a little bit fallen by the wayside. Whatever that self-care or happy place might be, you might be in a different spot today. And so those psychological impacts, I think, are much worse than the impact of the virus itself, because so many more people are being affected by that.
So let me just make sure I'm hearing you clearly. Is it, in terms of the patients that you're seeing, the stress itself as well that's sending clients your way, that people are experiencing hair loss from that stress?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, years ago, people weren't sure about the stress connection, and, even many dermatologists and board certified hair restoration physicians like myself would say, you're stressed out, and it would just kind of go by the wayside. Well, now we know, because, the phones are ringing, the emails are blasting, everything is happening right now. People are experiencing a lot worse hair loss across the board, whether it's male or female pattern hair loss or alopecia areata we're seeing, that's the autoimmune hair loss conditions. Even just simple scalp health is being affected. Itching, flaking, oily, dry, dandruff, which is not good for your hair growth either, by the way. So really, it's cutting across all the aspects of the kind of hair loss that we treat here at the practice.
And in terms of that, let's talk about treatment. I know that people, can contact you and other professionals for treatment. There are also a number of perhaps at-home hair regrowth treatment programs that people can do in the comfort of their home. But I do want to touch on this real quickly in terms of foods that you mentioned that people can kind of start building up their immune system. And I don't know, tell me if this is to prevent or to help with hair loss, the correction process, but omega-3 fatty acids, zinc, protein, you say iron, vitamin A and C, magnesium, and is it selenium?
Yes. So
And then of
these
course
are
your
all
biotin.
yeah, and so these are all super important. Well, first of all, if you're on some kind of a crash diet or restrictive diet, that's going to definitely impact those metabolic centers at the follicle, right? So the follicles can shut down. But it's really important to keep a good balanced nutrition, not only for your physical health, mental health. And as you know, I mean, hair is a barometer, an outward sign of how we're doing and how we're feeling, not just physiologically, but psychologically as well. So you definitely want to take care of your
Last
hair,
question for these
sure.
folks that are COVID survivors and they're saying they've experienced some hair loss. I know this is still relatively new. You're starting to study it and get a feel for actually what's going on. But when can they start to expect that hair growth? Do we even know at this point?
Yeah, so you asked like what to do about the situation. So just like after childbirth, which is a synchronized shed that usually happens 6 to 12 weeks later, that's what the high fever is causing as well. And we believe that these follicles, of course, they're still alive, but they've been, they've just shut down. And so hopefully you're going to bounce back. It's going to take a couple of months. But remember, these underlying conditions, if you have male pattern hair loss or female pattern hair loss or other issues going on at your scalp, this could be just turning the clock a little bit faster on those chronic and progressive conditions. So what can you do? Try not to count the hairs in your brush, but we certainly can evaluate that. Obviously, if you're able to come into the office, we are a COVID protected facility here at Bauman Medical, and we can measure actually the regrowth and what's going on. So we'll know how your hair is rebounding from these issues. If you want to do some kind of therapy or treatment at home, remember, we've got to wake up these follicles. So start the growth phase with topical medications or use laser light therapy to impart energy to the follicles in a non-chemical way. There are growth factor treatments that we can do at home that are, almost like doing PRP at home. Now, we're not going to take your blood, you're not going to spin your blood at home in a salad spinner in a test tube, but we have growth factor treatments that we can provide and send out. And that's been very popular during the shutdown for those people who could not get into the office for regular PRP. They're doing kind of this virtual PRP at home, which is great.
All right. Well, Dr. Alan Bauman, we'll leave it at that. By the way, you mentioned try not to count the hairs in your brush. Sometimes that's easier said than done. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Well, it's my pleasure, Hollani.
Have a good one.
Appreciate being on. You too.